Hi everyone and welcome again to my channel. In this video, I'm covering statistics. I'm doing median, cumulative frequency curves, and I'm really doing this where we have the phrase less than or at least. Now, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, well, stay tuned. I'm going to give you a note where I explain this. And of course, I'm doing this for group data, done in math, form 4 and in form 5. So please stay tuned. I have one example to do, but it's very detailed, and I hope that you understand at the end. Now, this is my second video that I'm doing on this. This is actually the part 2 of it, right? The first one, I actually used group data, found the median, but the phrases that were used in that example were no more than or more than. Whereas in this example, this video, sorry, I plan to do one question where I will actually use the terms less than or at least. So we will see the difference in the two. Right now, this is my note here on how to find the median, and I also have a detailed part here referring to interquartile range and even semi-interquartile range. So now let me move on to my question. So I'm calling this example 2. Now in here, they say the sample of 100 marks is given below. The marks, the categories are 1 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to 30, etc. So this is group data, and this is the frequency. It's 100 in all, so when I add this up, I'm supposed to get 100 down. So the first things that they ask for is to construct a cumulative frequency table and a cumulative frequency curve. Now for me to do that, for me to find the cumulative frequency table or curve, now they didn't even ask for median as yet, right? And in sifting through our scanning through my question, I'm not even seeing that they're asking for median, and that's okay, but I still will follow this note. I'm looking to see if I have any words like no more than or more than. I'm not seeing anything like that, but I am seeing less than and at least. Like I'm seeing it here, less than and at least. So because I'm seeing this, then I will follow this point here, which is point B, and I will use the upper class boundary, right? So instead of using like from 1 to 8, I will then put less than 8.5. So instead of using like from 1 to 10 here, I will add on a column here and I put less than 10.5. Next one, less than 20.5. So this, everyone, is the upper class boundary for each class interval. So I'm going to include a column which these values here. So that would complete this part B here. Everyone is the completed column. This is what it looks like. Now let me move on to number 2. Add another column to the right of this and call this cumulative frequency. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to add up all the frequencies as I go on. So this is the column I will get, and this takes me to the end of this point here, my second point. So now I move on to my third point. In my third point, they say I have to go to graph paper, and I'm going to use this as my x values and this as my y values. So now I'm going to do that and copy this here. So plotting the points for the x-axis here against the y-axis, this is what I get. X-axis will then be the marks, and this y-axis will be the cumulative frequency. This value here would actually be 10.5, this would be 20.5, 30.5, and so on. And these values will be the corresponding values here, like it would be 5 and so on, right? This would really be 10, 20, 30, 40, etc. Right? We're counting in tens, right? So this actually gives me the answer to my first part, which is to get the cumulative frequency curve. Now, before I do that, of course, I have to connect the dots and make sure that it's a nice smooth curve. It's not looking like straight lines that I've connected. It must have some sort of curve to it, right? So this, everyone, is my cumulative frequency curve. So now let me move on to the next part, which is part B, where they ask us questions from the curve. So for this first part here, they say from the curve, estimate the number of candidates who scored less than 36 marks. Now, marks, this is the question, right? So I have to look for the axis with marks in it. So that will be this one. This is the axis with marks, right? So I'm going to look for where 36 is. So if here's 30.5 and here's 40.5, 36 is somewhere here. So I'm going to come up here and read across like this, right? And I'm supposed to get something like around 28 candidates. Now, 28 candidates had scored up to 36 marks. they did not score 37 marks or anything like that. But 28 candidates scored 36 marks and less, right? So those who scored less than 36 marks, the answer for this would just simply be 28 candidates, right? So that is the end of this part. Now moving on to the next part. The number of candidates who scored at least 45 marks. So again, I'm going to come here and look for 45 marks. Come up here and go across here and read it off. And I'm going to get around 44 candidates. Now they said at least 45 marks. So they don't want the people who scored 45 marks or less. They want the people who scored, the number of persons who scored 45 marks or more. So if reading this off here, I got say 44 as the number of people who scored up to 45 marks, then my answer here will actually be 100 minus 44, which will end up being 56 candidates. So this is the answer for part B here. So this last part now says the number of candidates who would fail if at least 55 marks were required for it to pass. So again, if you're asking for 55 marks here, guys, we have to look for 55 on the x-axis and come up here to the y, to the curve, and then come across to the y-axis, right? Now, when I do that, now if you do it on your graph paper, you might get a more specific answer than me, but my estimate is around 60 candidates I will get. Now, what is that 60 telling me? That 60 is telling me that 60 persons scored 55 marks or less. So that group of 60 students or candidates, right, could have scored 55. All of them could have scored 55. All of them could have scored 54, and then one could have scored 59 students could have scored 54 marks, and one could have scored 55 marks, and so on. I don't know if you're understanding what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say that those 60 students could have been broken up in different ways for 55 marks. Now, if they're saying that 55 marks is our pass, doesn't that mean that 60 students did not pass then if they scored 55 marks or less? So then that, everyone, is our answer. The number of students who would have failed, the answer for this would be 60 students. Now, just saying, if they had asked the number of students who would have passed, if the pass mark is 55 marks, then it would have been 100 minus 60, which would be 40 students, right? So that, everyone, takes me to the end of my second example. I hope that you looked at the two videos, and I hope that they are in sync and you understand, and I hope especially that you got to take down the notes, and the main thing is you got to understand my work. Now feel free to drop me a line if anything, and thanks guys for tuning in.